What happens when a royal who champions mental health awareness, self-reflection, and emotional healing completely loses control in front of a live audience? You're about to witness the exact moment Prince Harry's carefully constructed image collapsed on national television. No spin, no royal PR team to polish things up. Just an unfiltered emotional meltdown on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. And it wasn't pretty. It started as a routine promotional interview. It ended with Harry storming off the set, visibly shaking, eyes blazing and coffee mugs shattered on the floor. And trust me, the cameras caught everything. But before we dive headfirst into the royal unraveling that has everyone talking, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because what you're about to hear might completely change how you see the Duke of Sussex forever. Let's go back to the moment it all began and watch a prince fall from grace one uncomfortable question at a time. The studio lights dimmed just enough to let the anticipation hang in the air like fog. The band had just wrapped its usual upbeat intro, but something about the atmosphere felt off. The claps from the audience were there, sure, but they weren't electric. They weren't excited. They were polite, controlled, measured. Enter Prince Harry. He strode onto the stage with that signature confidence, shoulders squared, jaw tight, a carefully rehearsed half-smile stretched across his face. He waved to the crowd, but even he seemed to notice the applause wasn't quite what he was used to. Not hostile, but certainly not royal. The camera caught a quick glance, a flicker of disappointment behind Harry's eyes. He masked it quickly, but the chill was there, and it was only about to get colder. Stephen Colbert stood to greet him, wearing that familiar grin, the kind that's both charming and dangerous. The kind that says, "I'm smiling, but I brought questions that could set the world on fire." "Welcome back to The Late Show, Your Royal Highness," Colbert said, emphasizing every syllable of the title with a smirk that danced right on the edge of mockery. Then came the jab, soft on the surface, sharp underneath. "Or should I say, Your Royal Californianness." The crowd chuckled. Not uproariously, more like the nervous laughter of people who aren't sure if they're witnessing a joke or the beginning of a knife fight. Harry smiled, or tried to. For a second his smile held, but then it twitched, just slightly. His lips tightened. His posture shifted. A subtle shift, but for anyone watching closely, it was obvious. He didn't like that, not one bit. "Just Harry is fine, Stephen," he said, with the kind of forced casualness that doesn't fool anyone. Colbert raised an eyebrow. "Right, of course," he replied smoothly, lowering himself into his chair with the relaxed poise of a man who knew exactly what he was doing. What was supposed to be a promotional sit-down was already veering off course. The stage was set. The air was thick with tension, and the battle of words was just getting started. Colbert leaned back in his chair, one leg crossed over the other, fingertips steepled. His smile hadn't left his face, but it had changed. It was no longer the welcoming smile of a late-night host. It was the smile of a man about to stick a needle into a balloon and pretend he's just curious what sound it makes. "So Harry," he began, voice light but precise, "you're here tonight to talk about your latest project, another documentary, right? About your struggles growing up in the royal family?" Harry nodded, his smile firm. "Yes, I think continuing to share my journey helps others who might feel silenced." Colbert hummed, nodding slowly. Then with a tilt of the head, "With all due respect, and I do mean that, how many times can you tell the same story?" The room paused. So did Harry. There it was, the first jab, gentle in tone, brutal in implication. A few audience members laughed, but it was a laugh wrapped in tension. No one wanted to be the one caught laughing too loud. Harry cleared his throat, a subtle shift in his seat. "Well, Stephen, I believe it's important to continue sharing my truth." Colbert jumped in quick as a scalpel. "Your truth? That's an interesting phrase," he said, leaning forward slightly. "Most people just call it the truth, but you've got a custom version, like a Netflix special available in 12 parts. The audience chuckled harder this time, but the humor was razor thin. Colbert's tone was teasing, but the subtext was sharp. "You're repeating yourself and the world's catching on." Harry's jaw tensed. His fingers tapped lightly on the armrest. "I'm not sure what you're implying, Stephen." "Oh, I'm not implying anything," Colbert said smoothly. "Just trying to understand. Because from where I sit, it seems like every few months, there's another sit-down, another exclusive, another memoir, always with more intimate details, more emotional unpacking." "I'm sharing my truth," Harry repeated, this time firmer, "because people deserve to understand what really happened." Colbert nodded again, this time with a bemused smile. "Of course, I just wonder if at some point your truth starts to sound like a PR strategy." Harry blinked. That one hit. His smile faded just enough to expose the edge of discomfort. His shoulders stiffened, and the practiced charm in his tone gave way to something colder, more defensive. "I've been nothing but honest in every interview I've given," he said tightly. "And yet," Colbert replied, stretching the silence like a rubber band, "so many people still seem unconvinced." The band wasn't playing. The crowd wasn't laughing. Everyone could feel it. The energy had shifted. Prince Harry wasn't just being interviewed anymore. He was being examined. And under the studio lights, every twitch, every blink, Every flicker of irritation was visible. Colbert's fingers drummed on his desk, rhythm steady, not rushed, not nervous. He let the tension breathe, just long enough for the audience to sit in it. "Let me ask you something, Harry," he said finally, voice casual, as if discussing the weather. "You've often spoken about your desire for privacy, that the press invaded your life, that the attention was unbearable, that it pushed you and your family to the edge." Harry nodded cautiously. "Yes," he said. "I think it's no secret the British tabloids did incredible damage to me, to my wife, to my mother." Colbert nodded too, but his eyes had sharpened. "And yet," he said slowly, "you've signed multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix. You've done exclusive interviews with Oprah. You've published a best-selling memoir detailing everything from your military kills to your frostbitten parts." The audience chuckled lightly, awkwardly. Harry's eyes narrowed. "That's different," he said flatly. "I'm choosing to tell my story. On my terms." Colbert leaned forward, that same polite smile on his face, the smile of a man sliding a knife across velvet. "So privacy is no longer about keeping your life private," he said. "It's about controlling the narrative, telling only the parts you want the public to hear." Harry stiffened. His hands, once resting comfortably on his lap, now gripped the edge of his chair. "You don't get it," he said, tension slipping into his voice. "It's about setting the record straight, reclaiming the truth." "But isn't that exactly what the tabloids said they were doing?" Colbert asked calmly. "Sharing their version of the truth." "That's not the same," Harry snapped. A few audience members jumped slightly at the sudden volume. The polite mask was beginning to slip, not just for Harry, but for the room. The crowd could sense it now. This wasn't an interview anymore. This was a confrontation. Colbert raised a brow. "You say you're tired of the spotlight," he said, "but you keep walking back into it with cameras, crews, book tours, streaming deals. That's not escaping publicity, Harry. That's leveraging it." Harry shifted in his seat again, his fingers now visibly clenched. "I'm not doing it for attention," he said through gritted teeth. "I'm doing it to help others, people who've been silenced." Colbert paused, let that sit, then tilted his head. "And yet somehow your healing journey always ends with another camera crew," he said softly. "Doesn't that feel contradictory?" The audience was no longer laughing. They were silent, transfixed, watching, waiting. Harry's smile had disappeared. His voice was tighter, his eyes sharper. The cool media-trained Duke was evaporating. "You're twisting my words," he said, voice rising again. "I'm quoting your actions," Colbert replied. And just like that, the walls around Harry began to quake. Every camera in the room caught it, the flicker of panic in his eyes, the flexing of his jaw, the quick inhale like a man preparing for either a fight or an exit. The unraveling had begun. Colbert let the silence hang again, the kind that feels more like a judgment than any words ever could. He leaned in, elbows on the desk, and fixed Harry with a gaze that was neither cruel nor mocking, just piercing. "Help me understand, Harry," he said quietly. "What did your family actually do to you?" The question was simple, but in the stillness of that studio it felt like a wrecking ball. Harry blinked. He looked off camera, as if searching for a lifeline, a producer, a familiar face, anything. Then he looked back and swallowed. They didn't support me," he said barely above a whisper. Colbert raised an eyebrow. "Didn't support you how?" Harry shifted again, his back no longer straight, the confidence from earlier, now curving inward like a shield. "When I was being torn apart by the media, when Meghan was receiving threats, when lies were spreading non-stop, they stayed silent. So they didn't issue public statements," Colbert clarified. "Is that what you mean?" Harry nodded once, quickly. "Exactly." Colbert tilted his head, voice still level. "But did they support you privately?" Harry hesitated. I don't know, maybe, but it wasn't enough." "Was it their job to defend you in the press every time someone said something negative?" Colbert asked. "Or was it your job to navigate adult life, like the rest of us?" The audience winced, not out loud, but inwardly. You could feel it. The tension had shifted again, coiling tighter. "They could have done more," Harry snapped. "Like what?" Colbert pressed. "Be specific." Harry opened his mouth, then stopped. His lips parted slightly, his tongue flicking like he was about to speak. But no words came. His hands clenched tighter on the armrests. They didn't defend me." "You said that," Colbert replied calmly. "But what exactly did they do that hurt you? You've said you felt trapped, unsupported, alone. Those are big feelings, but what did they actually do?" Harry stared ahead, jaw working like an engine without fuel. Finally, he blurted, "They made me walk behind my mother's coffin at 12 years old." Colbert's face softened just for a second. He nodded slowly. "That was traumatic." "Absolutely. And I can't imagine the pain of that moment." Harry exhaled, his voice cracking. "They didn't care what it did to me." "I believe it hurt you deeply," Colbert said gently. "But Harry, that was over 25 years ago." Harry stiffened. The crowd held their breath. "At what point," Colbert continued, "does a man stop reliving a boy's pain and start taking responsibility for the choices he's made as an adult?" Harry's face hardened. "Don't minimize what I went through." "I'm not minimizing anything," Colbert replied. I'm asking how long it will define you. There it was, the line, the moment, the emotional fork in the road, and Harry had no answer. He sat in silence, breathing hard, staring at the floor. Because for the first time in the interview, maybe for the first time in years, someone had asked him to separate his pain from his decisions. And he wasn't ready to do that. Harry's silence lingered for a few heavy beats. Then his jaw clenched, his nostrils flared, and without warning, his fist slammed the desk in front of him. The crack of wood and ceramic echoed through the studio. A coffee mug rattled, toppled, and shattered on the floor. The audience gasped, not dramatically, but involuntarily. It was the sound of disbelief. The sound of a room full of strangers realizing they were no longer watching a performance. They were watching a man come apart. "I've had enough of this," Harry snapped, voice trembling with rage. "You sit there and pretend to care about mental health, about family, about respect, but all you're doing is attacking me." Colbert didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He just leaned back slightly, hands folded, tone steady. "I'm asking you questions, Harry. Questions that millions of people have been asking. You've spoken your truth in books, interviews, documentaries, all with your version of events. I'm just trying to understand the other side." "There is no other side," Harry shouted. "There's the truth, my truth." Colbert's gaze sharpened. "There it is again," he said softly. "Your truth." Harry glared at him. "Let me ask you this," Colbert continued, calm as ice. "Do you ever worry that you've monetized your trauma?" The room went dead silent. You could hear someone exhale in the fifth row. Harry's face went pale, then red, then a shade somewhere between fury and disbelief. "What did you just say?" he growled. "You've signed multi-million-dollar deals," Colbert said. "Unfazed. You've written a best-selling memoir. You've done globally televised interviews, produced docu-series. And the common thread in all of them is your pain, your story, your trauma." "I'm helping people," Harry began, but Colbert raised a hand, cutting him off gently. "You may be," he said. "But can you honestly say you're not also profiting from it?" Harry stood suddenly, his chair scraping violently across the floor. His body was shaking, eyes wild, fists clenched. "You have no idea what I've been through," he seethed. "You sit there in your little studio with your smug questions and your coffee mugs, and you think you're better than me." "I don't think I'm better than you," Colbert said, finally sitting upright. "I think I'm someone willing to say what nobody around you seems brave enough to say. That maybe, just maybe, you've built a brand out of being broken." That line hit like a gunshot. The audience was frozen. No laughter, no murmuring, just stunned, paralyzed silence. Harry looked around, scanning faces, eyes darting, searching for support, for empathy, for anyone who still believed the script he'd been reciting for years. But the silence, that told him everything. His voice, now more desperate than angry, cracked. "You're trying to humiliate me." "No, Harry," Colbert said evenly. "I'm trying to hold you accountable." Harry's hands were trembling now. The polished persona was gone. This wasn't a royal. This was a man cornered, exposed and unraveling in front of millions. Harry stood there, chest heaving, hands shaking, eyes burning with a fury that had nowhere to go. His royal mask, the one he'd worn for decades, was in pieces on the floor. Colbert stayed seated, eerily calm, but his voice dropped an octave, now deeper, more direct. "You've turned your pain into a brand, Harry. You've weaponized your wounds and sold the shrapnel to the highest bidder." That was it, the final spark. Harry reached up, ripped off his microphone and flung it to the floor with a loud snap that echoed like a gunshot across the studio. The wires whipped around his neck and hit the stage with a clatter. The audience gasped in unison. "I'm done," he spat. The studio erupted not with noise but with movement. Security jumped up from both sides of the set, earpieces buzzing, moving toward the stage just as Harry turned to leave. Colbert raised a hand quickly. "Stand down," he said to his crew. "It's okay, let him go." Harry didn't look back. He was already marching off, his boots pounding the floor with every furious step. His shoulders were stiff, his body vibrating with rage. But just before he reached the edge of the stage, he turned back, his eyes locked on Colbert, his voice shaking with venom. "You sit there in your little studio, surrounded by applause and laughter, and your comfortable opinions," he snarled. "But you'll never understand someone like me. Never." Colbert didn't blink. "You might be right," he said quietly, "but maybe that's because you've never let anyone try." Harry stared at him, eyes glassy, face flushed as if unsure whether to scream or cry. Then, without another word, he turned and disappeared behind the curtain. Gone. The studio was silent, cameras still rolling, audience still frozen, coffee mugs still shattered on the floor like broken symbols of everything that had just imploded. Colbert exhaled, slowly, then turned back toward the audience with a heavy sigh, the weight of the moment sinking in. "Well," he said, smoothing his suit, "that was not how we planned to end tonight's show." The camera slowly pushed in on Colbert as he sat back in his chair. The applause sign light stayed dark, the crowd too stunned to move. No one laughed, no one cheered, no music played, just broken ceramic on the stage. Colbert looked directly into the lens. No cue cards, no teleprompter, just a man talking to millions of others through a screen, raw, honest, and still processing what had just unfolded. Well, he began, voice calm but weighty, that wasn't easy to watch, and I'm guessing it wasn't easy to experience. He paused, scanning the stunned audience. Prince Harry came here tonight to be heard, he said. But the problem is he didn't want to be challenged. He came with answers, but only the ones he rehearsed. And the moment he was asked for the rest, the moment he was asked to confront what those answers cost other people, he trailed off, shook his head slightly. He walked away. Colbert folded his hands. No smirk now, no punchline. Just a slow, careful reflection. There's a dangerous thing that happens when pain becomes your identity, when you wear wounds like armor and call it truth. Yes, trauma is real. Yes, people deserve to be heard. But at some point, if you never let go of being a victim, he looked directly into the camera. You stop healing. You stop growing. And the story you think is saving you starts to trap you. He tapped the desk gently. Victimhood can be a shield. But if you're not careful, it becomes a cage. And eventually, you're not protecting yourself anymore. You're just hiding. Silence again. He glanced toward the broken mugs on the stage, still there, untouched. A shattered set piece of a conversation that had gone completely off the rails. Colbert gave the faintest sigh. When we come back, he said softly, we'll have some music. God knows we could all use some. The camera slowly pulled back. The set was quiet. The audience still frozen. The prince was gone. And all that remained was the echo of what happens when someone confuses being heard with never being questioned. Fade to black. So, what do you think? Did Stephen Colbert cross the line, or did someone finally have the guts to hold Prince Harry accountable? Was this an ambush, or the first time the Duke of Sussex had to face real, uncomfortable questions? Was this a royal meltdown, or just the moment the mask finally slipped? Drop your take in the comments, we read every one, and hit subscribe because this won't be the last time a celebrity walks off set.